Hello and Happy New Year. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to join our presentation about the predictions for the digital marketing and digital workplace technology world in 2018. It's one of our most exciting presentations of the year, and then we're going to be kicking off a very busy schedule of webinars. So again, certainly appreciate you taking some time out of your day. My name is Scott Dill. I'm on the business development team here with Real Story Group, and my colleague Jared Gingras, who's our managing director and co-author of the newly published book about the right way to select technology, will be on the line shortly. For those of you that are new to Real Story Group, we're fundamentally an analyst firm that publishes detailed research on the following topics. So as a subscriber, you can leverage evaluations for one of these marketplaces, several of these marketplaces, or all 8. So certainly encourage you to download an excerpt from the research after today's presentation. You'll notice here on our next slide, this is actually a high-level look at the different vendors that we cover in these marketplaces. And what makes us unique is that we actually only cover content-based technology, and that allows us to cover more vendors than a typical analyst firm, and that includes open source providers as well as some of the key mid-market players as well. So this map is also downloadable on our site. I encourage you to take a look at that. The second key differentiator about our organization is the fact that we do no work for the vendors we cover. When we were founded 17 years ago by Tony Byrne, he wanted to make us really unique in the marketplace in that we don't help the vendors that we evaluate with their strategy. We don't speak at their conferences or write white papers for them. So you can rest assured that we're going to be on your side of the table, giving you the real story about what the vendors do well, but perhaps more importantly, what they don't do so well. So with that, I want to turn things over to Jared. And again, thank you for taking some time today.
Great, thanks Scott, and thank you all for taking that time that Scott mentioned. We do always appreciate it, and as Scott mentioned, this is the first of our 2018 webinar series. We do these quite regularly for our subscribers and others, so we hope to see you down the road on other webinars as well. But this is our 12th year doing these year ahead predictions, and it's a fun exercise, but it's a bit humbling as well. I will say we always go back at the end of each year and look back and see how accurate we were for the previous year, and typically we've had a pretty decent run rate, I think, around 70 to 80% year over year. Some of them are debatable whether we hit the mark exactly or we're close, but we certainly are trying to put some new thoughts out there and challenge each and every one of you on some of the things that we're seeing and what we expect to see. And so one disclaimer before we get started, there's always a fine line between prediction and aspiration. For some of these cases, we're talking about things that we think we might see happen, and in some cases we're definitely talking about things we might wish that are to happen, so that they could best meet the needs of what we're hearing our clients ask for. So without further ado, let's jump into the 12 predictions. And there are 12, and we have a short period of time, so I apologize. I'm going to move a little bit fast. But as always, for those subscribers on the line, if you want to talk about any of these predictions or any other topic, feel free to reach out and schedule some advisory time with us. We'd be happy to delve into these topics in much greater detail with any of you. All right, so the first half of this prediction webinar, we're going to focus on digital marketing. And our predictions for the digital marketing in 2018 are really coming out of our work that we do with our clients, our digital, who are really focused on a day-to-day basis on a digital marketing perspective, and also from the work that we do in researching the close to 100 different vendors that fall within these 4 marketplaces that fall on the screen. So we cover web content experience management, digital asset management, marketing automation, and campaign and lead management technology. And our newest research stream is focused on customer relationship management, CRM systems. So you'll see some predictions around that as well. All right, so with that said, let's get into prediction number one. Prediction number one is in 2018, we expect to see an explosion of a relatively new tier or segment of technology called CDPs, or customer data platforms. And I know this is kind of a complex slide to start with, but my apologies for that. But you don't need to really get into all the details of this slide, but I want to call your attention to the layers of this technology layer cake, if you will. So at the top, we have some major distribution channels. In one step below that, we have some marketing and delivery services. In color, in the third layer down, we have something called our content and engagement management layer. Now, this is where many of you, I'm sure, do a lot of your work. And as I mentioned earlier, these content and engagement management technologies are really some of the main technology spaces that we at Real Story Group cover. And we think they're really fundamental pieces of any marketing technology stack. In fact, we've taken to call them the anchor stores of the MarTech mall, if you will, those players in there. But as many of you well know, content alone is not enough to build the type of experiences that you want to deliver to your constituents. So what has been really in vogue recently is trying to marry up what you've learned about your constituents in forms of data with the content, and make that combination into something that's actionable, so that you can deliver the right messages at the right time to the right person. So the challenge that we've seen from many of our clients is they have data about their constituents in a lot of different silos, and it's really difficult to do things with that, whether that data is in BI systems or analytics systems or product information management systems, ERP systems, CRM systems, or a whole slew of other different data silos. So our prediction for 2018 is that there will be a new technology that becomes a real anchor in your MarTech stack, and that's a CDP, a customer data platform, that aims to really aggregate some of this data in really logical ways, so that you can start to make much more use of that data when it comes to building those experiences in your content systems. So it's a relatively new space, but I can tell you there are quite a few vendors who have recognized this problem and are building new solutions to address this problem. So we've started to write quite a bit about this. We have an advisory papers for our subscribers. If you're interested in that, you can see what we've written so far, but you can expect to see us write a lot more about this in the next year. But we expect this to be top of mind for many of you in 2018. All right, prediction number two. We expect there to be an implosion of vertical specific CRM tools. So I mentioned earlier that CRM, or customer relationship management technology, is our newest research area that we started covering in 2017. And one of the things that we have noticed as we've really started to focus on this in greater depth was that many of you out there are really struggling with your legacy CRM systems that tend to be really built for your industry. You know, this is very common in the manufacturing space and nonprofit space, and in some work with the higher ed space in particular, we went out and counted there's really no less than 12 really significant CRM vendors that solely focus on higher ed. And that might have been well and good at some point in time, because they know your language, they know your industry. But what we've found is that the lack of scalability with these tools, the lack of interoperability with other systems in your marketing stack, and lack of an ecosystem in terms of partners and other, in terms of technology partners and services partners, has really holding some of you back when it comes to achieving the marketing goals that you'd like to achieve. So we've seen a bit of a shift away from vertically specific CRM technologies, and instead more and more people are starting to look towards the open marketplace, in particular at what we call the big 8 CRM vendors out there. These are the vendors that we started covering this year and have detailed evaluations on each of these 8. If you're interested in any of that, please feel free to download a sample or check out that research, because if you're in that transition from the smaller legacy CRMs to one of the big 8, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at the right ones. Prediction number 3 is around digital asset management, and in particular, sort of a shift we're seeing in the marketplace as a whole. We've been covering the DAM space for quite a long time, and we've seen a lot of changes happen within this space. But what we're certainly seeing is, as this marketplace matures, there's a bit of a bifurcation happening among these vendors. So, if we were talking 5-6 years ago, we would have talked about DAM vendors having a relatively uniform set of services when it comes to being repositories for assets. Of course, there were always differences in the details, but at a high level, they were all simply repositories for assets. As this marketplace has matured, we have seen certain DAM vendors, especially at the higher end of the marketplace, start to expand their capabilities. So at the highest level of DAM vendors that are out there, they're starting to call themselves much more than asset management systems. Rather, they're throwing their hat into the ring and providing lightweight product information management services, like PIM services. They're also throwing their hat into the ring and offering some lightweight MRM services or marketing resource management type capabilities. In some cases, they're looking at providing more capabilities when it comes to work in progress assets, before assets become final, and helping organizations manage that workflow, manage that process in a single system. And so while the top end of the marketplace is really expanding their scope of services, what this has done is there's still a need for some of you to just get your assets in order, and there's plenty of options that still exist for some of those simpler use cases, but the gap is widening, right? And with complexity, with a broader range of services, certainly comes some challenges. Certainly cost becomes more of an issue, and the differences between cost in these systems is drastic. The difference between what skill sets and capacity or technical capacity that you need to be able to be successful with these technologies is vastly different from the top end to the low end of this marketplace. So there's some real challenges, and it's more incumbent on you and more critical than ever that if you're looking for a digital asset management system, you need to be making sure you're looking at the right ones that were fundamentally built for what you're trying to do, and no longer I'll say the risk is greater today that if you pick a wrong product or the wrong product, you're going to be paying for it in the long term, because these systems are no longer apples and apples. There's some real differences among these, and some critical differences that you need to be aware of before making a buying decision. Prediction number 4 is around marketing automation. So for those of you who are not familiar with marketing automation, these systems are traditionally the systems that grew up from the background of helping you manage your emails to your email lists, and also helping with other outbound communications around social publishing and the like. But what we've seen happen with these marketing automation tools is that in recent years they've tried to reinvent themselves as more of a segmentation tools or personalization tools, and help you manage your campaigns and orchestrate campaigns across a variety of different touch points. However, that's kind of boxed people in many cases, particularly because they tend to be bound to specific delivery channels and data sets. So as sort of a response to that, we're expecting organizations to move these types of segmentation and campaign management services lower in the stack. So sure, your marketing automation system will be sending your emails at the end of the day, but there's but there's a real benefit in managing your segments and your campaigns outside of your marketing automation systems, not the least in which you're able to use those segments for through other technologies and other touch points that you're trying to create. So one example is, you might want to target the same segment that you sent an email to through a virtual event or a live event, and you might want to be able to use those lists in some very different ways, or and pull those lists and segments into your sales tools or other engagement tools. So it makes sense, and there's a lot of benefits to pull those segments, to pull those campaigns out of your marketing automation system. Next up is a prediction around a revival in marketing dashboards. So, I think we've all experienced dashboards, but I think what's happening in 2018 is that today's marketers are using so many different tools. There's so much experimentation going on. There's so many people are thinking in terms of marketing that what we're hearing is really causing CMOs to tell us, I have very little insight into what's going on in my marketing organization. So I want to be able to see what's going on with my systems. I want to see what's going on with my people, my resources. I want to see what the processes look like when it comes to content creation and campaign creation and campaign progress and campaign success and campaign failure. And not the least, I want to be able to know how much I'm spending on all of this. So we expect there to be a rise in integrating this data into a single dashboard type view to help marketing leaders get the pulse of what is really happening and be able to really track their results and progress in one case. And the good news here that the way APIs are today, with REST APIs in particular, making it easier to connect these disparate data sets and those CDPs that we talked about emerging, this is allowing this integration to happen, and it's making this type of view easier to create. So that's some positive news as we head into the new year. So the last digital marketing focus prediction we'll make is that we expect there to be a backlash when it comes to headless web content management. Now, headless web content management was really one of the big buzzwords that was in vogue in 2017. For those of you who don't know what I mean by headless web content management, at its simplest core, what I'm talking about here was there was a rise among web content management systems to separate the engagement and presentation and experience layer from the content itself. So it was all about allowing you to manage content at its simplest, most granular level, so that you can inject that content into different websites, different social channels, different device channels, without having the experience layer get in the way. And architecturally, it's quite elegant. A lot of the tech folks who have been involved with this really love this approach. It's like I said, it's a very elegant technical approach. But what we're starting to see at the end of 2017, and we expect to kind of continue into 2018, is that these marketers out there are realizing that in some cases you've taken a little bit too much control from us. Many marketers want that ability to manage experiences, not just manage content. And so they want more, and so they're going to demand more. In a select few cases, we've actually seen some vendors start to compromise here and allow their marketers to not only manage content as a service, but also start to manage engagement as a service. So allow marketers to manage modules of engagement that you can then plop into different device channels, so that you're not just managing the content, but you're managing how people experience that content as well. So this is a bit of a complex topic that it's hard to do justice to in just a few minutes, but this is something that one of the conversations that we're advising all of our or many of our subscribers on an ongoing basis. This sort of swinging of the pendulum from headless to somewhere in the middle, head optional at some level, or and it's a bit of a transition, and the vendors are transitioning, and many of you are transitioning your needs and requirements as well. All right, so that takes us through the first half. And again, I know we're rushing here, but we're going to keep moving on to the second set of 2018 predictions. These will be focused on the digital workplace side of the house. So in our world, when we talk about digital workplace, we're talking about more internally focused technology. So technologies for the enterprise. So, and when we talk about those in our context, it's really from the perspective of our evaluations of vendors across these 4 distinct technology marketplaces. So we cover enterprise collaboration and social software, cover enterprise portal software, we cover enterprise content management, cloud file sharing, and document management software, and of course we cover SharePoint in quite some detail because it is almost omnipresent in many large organizations. So with that, let's get into some digital workplace predictions. The first digital workplace prediction is that Office 365 will supplant SharePoint. Now, anyone remember this graphic from SharePoint 2010? This was Microsoft's answer to the enterprise, where it was going to propose SharePoint as this behemoth service that was going to solve all of your problems in one under the title of one type of software, and that was SharePoint. I think we've seen this tradition since 2010 quite a bit, to the point where Microsoft has realized that people in many cases are looking for some very targeted single purpose applications. And so they've been on this journey to start to offer these targeted solutions. And what that ends up looking like is a bunch of services from Microsoft, and the group of these services has become known as Office 365. Now, we don't think that this transition is necessarily a bad thing. In many cases, it's a good thing. But of course, it comes with some really big challenges. One of which is, when you're offering these distinct services, where do you go to collaborate? Now, Microsoft would say you collaborate in Teams, but doesn't it make sense to collaborate in some of these other areas as well, in the context of projects, in the context of other things, other these services as well? Now, one of the reasons that this becomes a bigger challenge is Microsoft itself has different teams working on each of these different applications. So as those development teams have separated, it's becoming harder to view exactly how your organization can take advantage of a cohesive set of these applications to provide your employees with what they need to do their jobs in the best possible way. So again, not necessarily a bad thing that we're seeing a divergence from an omnibus platform, but it's going to bring on some challenges as well. Not the least of which is what happens to all of you who are still SharePoint on-prem clients. SharePoint 2019. It feels like it's an obligation from Microsoft, and we expect there to be some pain points along the way for some of you who are still living under that model. So prediction number 8 is around we're expecting a community manager revolt. So I'm sure some of you have seen some of your communities that have grown up over the years get replaced by some pretty large social networking services from some of the largest software vendors out there. Some of which you might know, as Yammer, Chatter, Facebook Workplace. These are tools that really came into vogue recently and have gotten quite a bit of adoption. However, what we're hearing from our clients and otherwise is that without real community technology platforms, it's hard for real community managers to be involved. And it doesn't mean that you won't be successful without without these community services. But without community managers, your employees have to work that much harder to find the right information. And so we've already seen some quiet revolts happening among people who had provided values to their organization as community managers in the past, really starting to showcase how community or enterprise conversation that you get from things like Yammer and Chatter and Facebook Workplace is not the same as true enterprise collaboration. And so what we encourage you to do is don't think about enterprise collaboration as one big bucket item. Really drill down into what it is you're trying to do. And on the screen, we're showing our sort of this is our visual of showing the different use cases that fall within the guise or under the guise of enterprise collaboration. So everything from something very structured of knowledge-based management to something very networking oriented, like just conversation across the enterprise. There are a whole slew of different areas that really get into the gray area of collaboration. And what we found is not only do you want to identify the right technology that is suited to achieving your best results with regard to each of these scenarios, but in some of these scenarios require some community manager intervention, and you'll want to be cautious of that as well. Number 9 is we expect a Cambrian explosion of digital workplace tools. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Scott Brinker's Chief Martech's graphic that depicts the digital marketing technology explosion over the last few years. And I think this year's, at the end of 2017, he was charting over 5,000 different marketing technologies. Well, we said, why don't we look at what's going on in the digital workplace side? And what we kind of noted, and when we started to put together this graphic, is that it's very similar on the digital workplace side. There's really become an explosion of vendors who are trying to carve out little pieces of this pie. And if there's one thing for sure, is that I don't think that this is slowing down. There's a number of new vendors trying to become players in this space, a number of new technologies, particularly around AI and chatbots that are trying to improve the employee experience and carve off different pieces of this. But I expect this to continue in earnest in 2018. Number 10 is around the employee experience. So with all those vendors that I just showed in the last prediction, obviously it's a challenge for you to create a digital workplace that is truly employee-centered rather than enterprise-centered. So we have been long encouraging our clients to put their employees at the center of their digital workplace and start to think about what they need, and then provide technologies that meet those needs, rather than pick technology and have your employees adjust. So what we've seen here is, and what we predict to happen over the course of the next year, is that there'll be centers of excellence emerging within organizations, particularly around how to craft a user experience that is customized for your particular employees. Now, we think that this will lead to a rise in user experience advocates that are taking a holistic view of what people need to do their job, and particularly people focusing on applications rather than sites or places to go to do work, features and news and content, kind of that legacy intranet type thinking, and rather focusing on applications. What do people need to do to be successful? Another similar prediction, or kind of an extension of the last few predictions, is that we think there's going to be a rise in what we're calling small p portals. So we've long covered the the enterprise portals of the world, and we continue to do so. And there's still certainly a role for the capital P portals, the IBMs, the LifeRays, and the Oracles of the world. But I think people are, especially internal employees, are realizing that I want something that is personalized for me. I want my digital workplace to be as personalized to me as possible. And to do that, I want to be able to integrate data. I want to integrate content experiences and integrate user interface experiences so that it's personalized for my needs. So the way they're doing that is we think there's going to be a rise in these, what we're calling these small P portals, which are really lightweight, low code ways of integrating products. And by doing these lightweight integrations, you're able to create these more personalized, customized experiences. And finally, we think that there's going to be a rise in digital asset management, but this time, not like we talked about it before as being more of an engine for your external communications and your marketing technology, but more for your internal use cases. So we have seen this happen from some real forward-thinking organizations recently who are getting out of this mode of trying to manage their internal assets in systems like document management or enterprise content management platforms, but rather managing their assets at a much more granular level and really positioning themselves to move beyond a world where everything is stored within documents. Getting outside of the post-Power or beyond a post-PowerPoint world or a post-Word world or post-Excel world and start managing their assets, because the asset is fundamentally the most granular piece of content that has value for your organization. And if you start managing those assets and providing your employees with a repository for those assets and a single point of truth for those assets, you're able to give your employees the tools to create the internal and external experiences that they desire. All right, so I know that was quick, and I hope that gave you some food for thought, and I hope that gave you some ideas and some and maybe there's some that you agree with, maybe there's some that you don't. We'd love to hear from you on these ideas. Feel free to shoot us an email at any time. If you want to try some of the tools that we've created in 2017 that relate to all of these 8 areas that we cover, feel free to try out the Real Quadrant Shortlist Generator, the Real-Time Vendor Comparison Tool, or the Real Score Effectiveness Model right on our site. You can give them a try. Or as always, download a sample of any of these areas. We'll give you a chapter, a free evaluation chapter that will give you a real sense of how we evaluate these tools on what they're good at, and maybe more importantly, what they're not so good at. So with that, I'll wrap up and say, again, Happy New Year, everyone. Looking forward to engaging with you all in 2018, but thank you very much for spending some time with me today. We'll talk to you down the road. Thank you.